Today on Partners in True
I
Crime.
will say I never fathomed that I would be in this place. I mean, no one in a position like me, who is not trained in criminal justice, would think that they would be picking up, the ball and running with it and trying to do everything they can to, get the police to do their job. For 40 years, my aunt called at least weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, called nonstop. What are you doing? What have you done? What this, what that? Can you this? Can you that? And ideas. And before long, she was treated like the crazy woman who called all the time. And we don't have time for this. And oh gosh, it's Glennie Raffle again. Today in a very tricky place because now we have a confession. But I am going to tell you, without telling a whole lot of detail, that confession is not because of the police.
All right, we're back with Alison Duiker on the Justice for Lonene Rogers story, and we've been cranking on these things, and there's a lot of information. It's very fluid, but I think what we're going to talk about today is just your experience with the investigation and what you had to go through. I mean, I'm sure it was how many years has it been now since you've been diving into
45.
this? 45. But like when you actively started doing the investigation?
5.
So 5 years, it's a long time. It's a long time. And, unlike a lot of these cases, I mean, that we deal with, you're getting answers. A lot of these cases we deal with, they still don't have answers.
Right.
We get called every day, and I think the last case, the one we have, is close to 40 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like 35, 40 years, and they don't have any answers yet. So the fact that you have answers that you basically orchestrated through your investigation is pretty fantastic and incredible, because a lot of these cases don't get the answers. But I think your tenacity and your willpower and your not accepting no for an answer and making sure you keep everybody on their toes who say they're looking into the case, I think is the reason why you're in the position you're in now. And hopefully in a few weeks, you're going to find out a lot more of how this is going to resolve.
So I do.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you dealt with and how you started to evolve as your own investigator.
Mm-hmm. So I will say I never fathomed that I would be in this place. I mean, no one in a position like me, who is not trained in criminal justice, would think that they would be picking up, the ball and running with it and trying to do everything they can to, get the police to do their job and get, different people to speak and trying to bring people to the police for them to interview. Like, it is crazy to think all the things that I have done. And I don't say that like to toot my own horn. I say that because for 40 years of this case, 40 years, we went through investigators and, many eyes in law enforcement. I believe there were probably some investigators that were worth their grain of salt and a lot that weren't. There were some that probably worked very hard. And, those investigators have, some of them have reached out to me. Some of them I've heard stories of how dedicated they were, or their children. I'm friends with one of the investigators' sons on Facebook, and he is no longer with us, but the son reached out and said he eat, sleep, breathe this case. And, that was very moving for me to hear. But the bottom line is I was just trying to survive all those years. Like, I was a kid when it happened. So I couldn't have a pivotal role in the investigation because I was a kid. And then when I wasn't a child any longer and I was an adult and on my own, I was still trying to just find my way in the world and trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself and, trying to establish a career and being independent alone. I had a lot of people who took interest in me that helped me like stay on the right path and in the right place. But there was no one like that was my co-pilot. Let's do this. Like I haven't had a co-pilot fighting side by side with me. This is full bore Alison Duiker. And
well, you and your brother were orphans, basically.
Basically, right. And we did have people that, that I credit the Dinsmores for being my family, for being my parents, but I only lived with them for 4 years before I went to college. I mean, I came to them as a teenager, and it's hard. It was very hard to have the courage myself to feel like I could manage life and that, like this thing that was this giant, this mammoth thing that I could never talk about as a child. Like for me to feel like I could really look this case in the eye and try to figure out what I could to be helpful. I didn't think it was something I could do. I can't even tell you that I actually wanted to do that because I didn't think I had it within me to make a difference. If the police who are in charge, who are trained in their field can't do it, how could I make a difference? I felt very helpless. How could who am I? How could I do anything to make a difference?
Yeah, I think that's a huge loss of illusion for a lot of victims' families about, everyone, unfortunately, they think, it's TV and that, just because the police are involved, that it's going to get solved, as we know that, they do the best they can with the resources that they have, but it doesn't happen. I mean, they just.
Sometimes it doesn't. And that's the thing that threads all of people like yourself together, Alison, is this feeling of not thinking that you're able to do it and then that feeling of not thinking that you're able to do something like this and then accomplishing such an amazing feat. It really is a journey. And that's what I think is so interesting. It's that like, we didn't know any of this until we started producing true crime television. Like we didn't know that the police wouldn't have the resources to follow through on a cold case or have the resources for a missing persons case, that there's no one organization that only works on missing persons cases. And when we found out all of this stuff, as we went through our careers, we just started using our resources to try to help as many people as we could. But when we met Paula from Molly and Colt, it was the same. I mean, she was a housewife from Texas. She had no clue on how to deal with the OSBI or the Oklahoma Highway Patrol or any of the local law enforcement people. I mean, she was putting her life in danger on a daily basis, going out and meeting with drug dealers and people to try to get answers. But I think that's the drive that you had also, was to get answers, to get to know. I think isn't that the driving piece here, that you have to know the answer?
It is. Have you noticed my body language? Because I've been fidgeting a little bit as you've been talking, as my blood is boiling. So I'm going to now address the elephant in this story, and that is the police. So up until now, there have been many times in episodes that we have talked about the police, and I really just, because where we are today in this case, I have not commented or addressed the topic and just kind of let it go. But I'm going to address what you just said. And that is, I do believe in some cases, in some instances, at some points in time of an investigation, there's just nothing you can do. There aren't the resources, or there isn't enough money, enough time, enough blah, blah, blah. But that was not always the case with mine. With my case, that was not always the case. And I sit today in a very tricky place because now we have a confession. But I am going to tell you, without telling a whole lot of detail, that confession is not because of the police. And they were a secondhand part of that. And I can't get into a whole lot of specifics because we haven't been to trial yet. But what I'm going to say is that for 40 years, my aunt called at least weekly, monthly, biweekly, called nonstop. What are you doing? What have you done? What this, what that? Can you this? Can you that? And ideas. And before long, she was treated like the crazy woman who called all the time. And we don't have time for this. And oh gosh, it's Glennie Raffle again. And don't get me wrong, when you're the victim in this position, you become a little crazy because you're begging people to do something. And, what I know of my aunt, I see the same passion that I hold. I don't do anything unless I do it full bore. And for her, not only does she also possess those qualities, but you're talking about her sister that she was super close with. So in addition to all of that, over the years, to be told time and time and time again, we're working on it. We're looking into it. It's a cold case. It's one of the cases that I'm working among the many other, but it is a cold case and we have to address, the current cases first. So over the years, the case, per their verbiage to us, to the family, is it becomes less and less important. We spend less and less time. We do less and less. We spend less resources. We spend less time. We don't have time to do anything for your mother, is what I heard for 40 years. It is what my aunt heard for 40 years. It is what my uncles heard for 40 years, time and time again. And I can't get into a whole lot of specifics, but I'll tell you this. The day that my mother disappeared, the police officers showed up because my grandfather threatened to beat the living shit out of him. So they showed up for threat of violence.
You mean being at a bud?
Out of bud, right.
It's your father.
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting a little passionate.
No.
So because of the threat of violence, the police showed up. They didn't show up because they were like, oh my gosh, there's a missing person. There was no concern about that. And
well, I think also, systematically in this country, missing persons cases are not handled the way they should be. Okay.
Well,
the fact that we're waiting 24 hours to even start an investigation and the resources aren't there for them. They're not, those guys in those small towns, they're not trained to be able to do this type of an investigation, right? They don't even have that.
I get you, but they're state troopers.
No, I understand that.
Well, same thing. Their main goal is highway traffic safety and all of that. They have all these other divisions, but they're not a potential homicide. They'll cover it because the locals can't do it. But there was it's I'm not defending them.
No,
but at the same point,
it's infuriating on all different levels, because like you said, there was one investigator who he wanted to do something and maybe was told that he couldn't. We've talked to cops before where they were told, you have to get off this case. You have to stop. Like, you have to just let it go. And they didn't want to let it go. And on the side, they would do it, when no one was paying attention, and they fought and fought and fought. But,
we've even had police officers who are not like state highway patrol people who've actually kind of floated information to us when they were taken off the case.
Yeah.
And so it's like, they're kind of handicapped too by their brass and their hierarchy. That's the thing about
change.
Well, that's what
chain of command. It's all about chain of command.
That's what I'm saying. There has to be some kind of solution here where people in your position have an organization, a dedicated law enforcement organization that can help you get answers so it doesn't take 40 years.
So what I was saying was, the night they came to the house because of the threat of violence, not because she was missing, they never took a single photo. There's not one photo of the crime scene. There's very minimal notes about the entire meeting. No, they looked around, they glanced, and they wrote what they saw, and that was it. And that's police work 101. Now I get it. It was 40 years ago. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is there were enough police officers who did not do their due diligence.
Got a question for you. When Glennie, when she told that story about the dog, the puppy, and that blood choked her.
Yeah.
Did she tell that story to the cops early on?
Oh yeah. It's on file.
Okay.
They knew that years ago.
They knew that years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's like these missing persons, because they look at, you got to look at because police officers, a lot of times, I think they look at statistics, and usually when something like that, domestics are both, because I did a lot of follow along docs with police officers where I was with them on their calls, and the two craziest, most dangerous calls that they would get, which seem very kind of standard, is traffic, when they pull someone over for a traffic stop, and domestic calls.
Absolutely.
Because you're walking into an unknown. And a lot of I would say 90% of the domestic calls, if someone said, the wife's not here and stuff like that, or she just took off, or the husband took off, or the child took off because there was an argument or there was a lot of family stuff. So that's what they're looking. They're looking for a lot of times the simplest answer to get through their shift sometimes. That, so I think a lot of that has a lot to do with it. I agree with you. We've been chanting this from the mountaintops that these missing person cases, I mean, they're saying 48 hours, 24 hours. I mean, it's like,
and when you have family members that are saying, this isn't right, this isn't behavior that this person would normally do, that should be taken seriously. Yeah. It shouldn't be, oh, well, the husband said this, so she must have run off. No, there was another case in South Carolina that we did that was very similar to your mother's case, where it was a mom and the daughter, the stepdaughter, who he said they ran off, and that nobody did anything. And this man continued. We confronted him, 30 years later?
With his sons. His sons were like your age and Aaron's age at the time that they went missing. So we found the sons, and they've been looking for their mom this whole time too. And they're 30 plus years, and we had them confront him.
And look, if I was Glennie and that was my sister, I would have been at the police station every single week. I would have drove them crazy. I would have done what you did. I would have done what Glennie did. I would have done what every single one of these people who are victims do, because no one's going to care as much as you about what happened.
And I think what I want to say to that is there is a huge amount of learning that needs to happen on the part of police departments when it comes to dealing with families and empathy and all of that, because there's my experience has been, and many people who I have talked to who have missing family members talk about how awful they are treated by the police, how we're treated like we're burdens, like stop calling us, and those kinds of things. And I feel like, no, I don't feel like, I know that in my case, this case was solved because I held their noses to it. I forced them. Little me, who has no law degree, no criminal justice background, like I did out of necessity for finding information about my mother. Like the power of that resilience, that perseverance couldn't be any greater than what I gave for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And for the last 5 years, I would call and call and call. And when are you going to go talk to him? When will you interview him? Why have you not interviewed him? And what I'd be told over and over again is things like, we can't force people to talk to us. Then they would say, there was one recent investigator who said, well, he did agree to talk to us at one point. And then she's going on to say, maybe he'll talk to us again. And I'm like, wait a minute. So go back. what happened when he agreed to talk to you? Did you talk to him? And she said, well, there was a hard time getting an interpreter and it just never happened. That's not okay.
Yeah.
No.
That meeting is when I got so angry and I was like, that's not going to happen again. And
that
was
not
5
okay.
years ago. And that was when I said, I get it. He's deaf. My mother was deaf and there's a language barrier, but it's not impossible.
No.
People sign. There are interpreters. Like, there are ways around it. It's not the typical easy path, but there are ways to do justice. Like, there's ways to work a crime and work around these roadblocks. Will it take a little longer? Sure. But 4.5 decades?
Yeah. No, I mean, these cases like yours and like Paula Fielder's, Molly and Colt, and Jennifer Kesse, which is still unsolved. And, you know, I mean, even though with the Molly and Colt thing, they've found remains, we don't know if anybody's going to be held responsible for it. Even though the guy that was with the two young people in the car was the last to see him, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's like, at least they have the bodies where they can kind of have some sort of resolution, but they still don't have a resolution. For you, once again, you're coming up on a potential resolution, but you still don't have a resolution because you don't know where your mom is. And you're probably never ever going to find her.
And I'm just gonna say it because you're not going to hear me make excuses for the police ever. There is no part of me that is going to accept that, well, they did the best they could, because they didn't. And I want to point out some dates. And what I want to say is that I was at my wit's end, like calling, I called the district attorney, I called the prosecutor's office, I wrote letters to the district, or to the what is the word? The Ohio and Pennsylvania
State attorney.
State attorney. Thank you. I wrote letters to governors and legislators, representatives. I started a Facebook page it's now at 8,000 people. Like, those are all things I did. And then I said, I'm done with this high information game. I'm going to say everything. And I get, like, there are some things that you have to keep, you know, to the chest, as Jeff would say, like, you have to kind of hold it in. And I get that. And I'm careful and cautious about that. Mm-hmm. But you don't get anywhere after 4 decades by holding on to secrets, saying, I can't tell you. I can't tell you if I talk to someone. I can't tell you when I talk to someone. I can't tell you what they said. Like, that's why you're 4.5 decades in on this case. And when I said I want to tell you dates, this is what I want to tell you. So for 40 years, this case was dead cold, freezing cold. There is nothing we can do. And that's what I heard over and over and over again. So at the 40-year anniversary, I'm told that. But yet at the same time, I hear from an investigator when I asked to meet with them, she says what I just said, that he said at one point he agreed to meet with us. And then she says we weren't able to get an interpreter. It never happened. Well, I'm talking to you years later and you still didn't. You just decided I'm not going to do it. That's not okay.
That's okay.
Bad policing.
Absolutely not. No.
So
that's unacceptable.
It's not okay. Mm-hmm. And at 40 years is when I said, I am vowing to do everything I can to move this case forward. And I will no longer accept those ridiculous excuses for why you can't do things, why you can't this and why you can't that. I can. Because I'm not bound under the same stupid rules that make them not allowed to talk about the case, not allowed to do this, that, and the other.
So that's one of the things we tell. That's one of the things that we kind of highlighted. We highlighted it also in CrimeCon when we were there, is how, you know, victims' families aren't bound by the same rules and regulations as law enforcement. I mean, you as, like, if you wanted to go search a property or something like that, you're going to do it. Okay, the only thing you're doing is trespassing. And, like, you know, but if law enforcement does it and they do it, then they get in trouble. And then anything they find, they can't use in a court of law.
Yep.
So it's like, because they don't have a warrant, so it gets thrown out. So that's what we constantly try to tell people. And fortunately, the word is getting out. We saw it a lot at CrimeCon. We met a lot of victims' families, similar to yourself, in addition to the ones that we've worked with. I mean, Drew Kessie had to sue the police department of Orlando to get get the records, and they charged him $21,000 for copying fees for each one of the pieces of paper.
I
and he's
sued to get the file over and over and over again, all the way to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And was denied.
And it was denied.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, why? Why are you denying that? When you're a family member and you're looking for your mother, you should have access to those files. That law needs to change. And I understand, look, with the Savannah Guthrie case, like what's happening right now with Nancy Guthrie, there was too much information revealed to the public that may have hindered the investigation. They have said that. People I've talked to have said that too, who have been working on it independently. But at the same time, the way that they handled it, they could have released the same amount of information more clearly that could have helped the investigation. So that's another issue, is how are you communicating this information to the public and to the families? I don't feel like they have the right people doing that in a lot of these cases. And it makes a big difference, because you can just blurt out something stupid, and then before you know it, the media is running with it, and that's all, and that's it. Then the case is just going in circles. So it's really, really important to have all of these things thought out before you go talk to the press or before you start going public on information. I understand that part. But when it comes to 40 years later, a family member, it's your mother. You're not just like an extent. It's not like you're a cousin. You're her daughter. You should have all access to all of those files. Drew Kessie, father of Jennifer Kessie, he should have access.
I didn't do it.
Of course.
There's no fear that I'm the one that committed the crime.
Of course. And that's the thing. It's like
a lot of it has to do with liability. It's about preserving the investigation just in case something happens. But some of it, they just want things to go away.
They failed my mother, and they failed me. And I keep telling you, I keep saying dates, and this is why. So I said 40 years, they had the case. And finally I said, at the 40-year mark, I am taking this over. So I fought in every way I could. I did every podcast that I could find. I posted information about my mother and the case on every true crime page I could find on Facebook. I wrote letters. I asked people to also write letters. I nonstop, constantly. I got help from different agencies that were nonprofit that help, families of the missing. And one of those agencies was Private Investigators for the Missing. Now, I'm a teacher, and my husband's an insurance agent. Like, we don't have the money to pay for a private investigator, but I felt like that's what this case needed. And so I applied to Private Investigators for the Missing. You've had Jeff on the show. Yep. What I want to tell you is, in those 5 years that I started taking over the case, I begged the investigators, please go talk to him. Why are you not talking to him? And what I was told is, one, we can't force him to talk to us. And I said, well, did you even ask? And then it was, well, it's tricky because we have to get an interpreter, and it has to be a court certified interpreter. So it can't be just anyone. And, we had to go to the FBI to get an interpreter out of Harrisburg, which is hours away. I don't care. That's your job. But time after time after time, years, they gave me more excuses than I can even recount. There was a November a few years back where they said that they went and talked to him and things went well. And I was like, that's amazing. Now what? And I was told that they were just trying to get to know him and, get a good rapport, and they were going to go back. They never did. Years. I kept begging, and I was told, well, we only get one shot. So I don't want to go until I have enough information that I feel like I can do a good job with the second visit, because he might not let us back. Well, your might was years long. That's not okay. Let me finish, because then Jeff came on the scene.
I was just going to ask you that.
So Jeff came on the scene. I wrote all these dates down for tonight. Jeff came on the scene September 17th of 2024. 14 months later, he confessed. Do you want to know what was different about that? Now, I'm sure Jeff has a lot of other things, but he kept going and talking to him. What did I beg for 45 years? Go talk to him. And they kept making 1,000 different reasons why they couldn't do it. And Jeff, in 14 months, brings us to a confession because he kept going and talking to him. And that in my case, or not in my case, but in my book, that is systemic failure on the part of the police department. I will never say anything different. Now, will I say that the current investigator I have respect for? Absolutely. But he was the one I had to beg to go talk to him. Now, he probably wanted to, and someone told him no. I don't care who told him what. The police as a system failed my mother and failed me and failed my brother.
Well, it's ironic
and
too.
Not the reason why this case is solved.
No. But an ironic is that Jeff used to be part of that system.
Right.
So he knows. And I think, when we had him on the podcast, he was very kind of
careful.
Careful. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Understand, because I believe his son's like a trooper now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I don't want to say I have, horrible feelings for all police officers. I very much respect Kevin Geibel, who is the current investigator. I think that he tried, but the system runs in quite the hierarchy. And even though he may have had gut feelings for things that he thinks he should have done, he can't do it unless mom and dad say he's allowed.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's not just missing person cases. That's child trafficking, human trafficking. Yep. We deal with it. I mean, we deal with it on a daily basis. We work with a lot of these people, and a lot of the great investigators who are dealing with this are people who left the police department or a government agency and started something on their own because they were so frustrated with the process and all the hurdles that they have to deal with in order to get things done. And
way too many roadblocks.
Just the bureaucracy.
Too many roadblocks. But when it comes to missing persons, enough with you have to wait 48 hours. That's ridiculous. Right. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially if you know that your loved one is not going to leave without their wallet, their keys, their children, their credit cards, their hearing aids, their phone. I mean, these aren't things you're just going to leave behind. You're not going to leave your children behind.
99.9% only ever been one suspect. Ever.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of women on this planet are not going to leave without their children. Okay. So to even suggest that that's a possibility is ludicrous to me. I think that is the most ridiculous part of this whole thing. It's like she clearly loved her children and no one would ever have said differently. So why would you just take his word for it?
Right.
Again,
and that's why we still have hundreds of thousands of missing people.
Yeah.
Because it's roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
Well, the only people that can make a difference are people like yourself that have been through the fire, unfortunately. And so, it's it's a tough torch to hold, but unfortunately, no one else can do it because no one has this quote unquote street cred to really get into people's face and say, I experienced this for over 40 years, and this is what I think should be done. So, I think you're in a position once all this is said and done and Bud gets his justice and your family and your mom gets her justice, that, if this is something that you really feel needs to change, you're the one who can change it.
I'm actually already working on that. The Lonnie's Law. So I have been working on proposed legislation called Lonnie's Law that would term limit how long the police can withhold a file from the family. And, at the moment, I'm trying to get legislative support, and I've kind of been on hold a little bit.
Pennsylvania or Ohio?
Well, I was doing it in Pennsylvania, but I might switch that to Ohio because Ohio is much less conservative, and I might have more of a chance in Ohio than I do in Pennsylvania. But in Pennsylvania, I have had no luck.
Yeah.
But Okay, independent of that type of law, which is amazing, and that's exactly what needs to be done, is to be advocating for legislation. But what else would you suggest would be a solution to this type of issue?
I feel like there needs to be like a victim advocate that's assigned to police departments that knows how to talk to families, that knows how to give and take information, and that person should be responsible for the case as well. Because in my case, I was 5, but there are things that I remember as I go along. Like, there are things that I can contribute to the case. There are things that Glennie can contribute to the case. Her being strangled when, she was 14 by my father. Like, I feel like that needs to be a certified victim advocate. It needs to be someone who understands and can speak in an empathetic way. I feel like it should be a partnership, because how the case feels now is, it feels arrogant. It feels like, oh no, I'm not going to show you anything. I can't tell you anything. This is my case. Well, guess what? It was my mother. So I trump you.
Well, you got to understand, they do that with other agencies too. Independent. Yeah, they do it. We deal with it on a daily basis, where, the FBI will be brought in on a case, and they have, number one, they have to be called in by the locals. They can't just come in. Everyone says, oh, bring the FBI in. FBI has to be invited in.
Yep. I was told that. I tried to get the FBI involved, and they told me they couldn't unless they were invited.
Exactly. So I think it's something that
maybe it's a systemic problem.
It is a systemic problem.
And it's not just state by state. I think I think it's national. And I think the only way you're really going to get
power. Too much.
I think if you go on a national level and you get, there's plenty of victim rights organization, and I'm sure there's like-minded people like yourself and who experience the same tragic experience of protracted unknowing about their loved ones, and the unfortunate investigation being so drawn out and not looked into. And because and I'm not giving them excuse, but they do have an inordinate amount of cases they have to deal with, and and you have such a fragmentation of people coming in and coming out that there's no continuity. And so what an investigator, especially over 40 years.
But it's also a small agency in that area, right? It's a small police department.
No, it's a state.
It is. I think, like, as far as land is concerned, it probably covers a lot of area because it's so rural. But like, my thought is I don't know how you would divide it up, but every big city, I don't know, should have a cold case department. Period. That is their job. And some do. Some do, because Erie does, only 45 minutes away from where I was. Then why aren't you calling on them to help with this case? Yeah. Instead, when I have time, I'll work on it.
No, it's also the jurisdiction. I mean, that's what happened in Oklahoma. It's like the Noah Presgrove case. Like, they came on the scene and they said immediately, OHP said, and the local sheriff's department said, this is not a hit and run. But all of a sudden, that was the theory, that it was a hit and run, even though there was no evidence to suggest, and there still was no evidence to suggest. And even the medical examiner's report said blunt force trauma.
Didn't say truck.
It never said hit and run. There was no evidence to suggest a hit and run. There were no pieces from a car. There was the boy was naked with his shoes on. How do you keep your shoes on if you get hit by a truck?
Right.
You're going to get hit by a semi at 80 miles an hour, and you're going to have your shoes on? I mean, it's ridiculous.
And the hit of the truck made his clothes fall off?
Exactly.
Yeah, made his clothes fall off, but his head was still attached to his body.
And his shorts were in the middle of the street.
His teeth were scattered around. His
folded.
Necklace was like broken. It looked like a fight. And the medical examiner's report said blunt force trauma, as if it was a fight. My point being, small town, small law enforcement, local law enforcement. All of a sudden, the sheriff is in People magazine saying, oh, it wasn't a hit and run. But then he's gone. Before you know it, he's out. He's gone.
Yep.
So it's this small cloistered areas where they need to have oversight.
Yeah.
There needs to be oversight. If there's a case that's going on for 40 years, someone at the higher
holding to someone.
Exactly. At the higher state level should be like, hold on a second. what happened with this? How come this hasn't been resolved in one way or another?
Then pass it to somebody else. Like,
Well, here's the thing too. Here's the thing too, though, is like in the last 5 years, 6 years, the law enforcement all over the country has been decimated as the bad guy. So they're just trying to.
In some cases, it should fit.
Sometimes it does, but at the same point, what's happening is that they've lost a lot of resources. I mean, they can't, in LAPD, I mean, they can't hire enough. They need like another 3,000 officers, but they can't do it. I mean, it's like, and that's in a big, gigantic city like Los Angeles. So, and all these other departments too are getting decimated too. So it's like in San Francisco, we're dealing with, like, they actually,
case department.
they put a code, but it's all retired homicide detectives.
But
they come in and they devote their time. They don't even get paid.
They do it
because there's such an overload, and these guys who are retired realize we got to help out somehow. But it's like that's a way of handling it too. If you can't have the resources and bring people in. I mean, you know, like Jeff started becoming a private investigator for a nonprofit group, you know, because he still had that
running a cold case unit.
Exactly. But that started because he can't turn off that police investigative mind.
I'm so grateful.
And the fact that he was able to have the freedom as a private investigator that's why he accelerated so quickly. And he didn't have to jump through hoops. The hardest thing he had to do was find an interpreter.
Right. Yeah. And understandably so, you have your feelings based on your individual experience, as you have every right to. I would probably be exactly the same way. We have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement who, you know, put their lives on the line a lot and are in really scary situations, and they're good people. So it's like anything else. It's like there's good investigators, there's bad investigators. Unfortunately, in your case, you didn't have an investigator. They didn't even try. They didn't even seem like they really did much from the beginning. So that's
one, Kevin. I will say that both he and Jeff worked well together, worked well separately. And what I appreciated from Kevin when I said there should be a victim advocate to talk, Kevin would say, you know, I can't speak to that because of the case, but I will tell you I'm working on it. And like he would say enough generalities that I would feel confident about his actions. You don't have to tell me what you're doing. Tell me that you are doing something.
Right.
Yeah, that's the balancing act they have to do. They have to keep you in the loop and let you know, but they can't offer anything. And then that's because they don't want to get in trouble. That's the whole thing. It's a horrible
when
system.
That turns into, or when that reveals that you're not doing what you should be doing. For example, why on God's green earth did you not get an interpreter and talk to my father when he said, "Sure, I'll talk to you"?
Exactly.
Years later, you're telling me you never did it? What?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just lazy.
That's ridiculous because it would
it
takes resources, it takes time, and it's negligence. Yeah, they needed to just go find an interpreter and do it. Just do it. What I don't, you know, yeah, okay, it takes longer. It takes time. It costs money, but it still needed to be done.
And I'm sure that had a lot to do with
money you would have saved if you just did it in the first place.
Exactly. Well, that's you know, it's like we always say, stepping over a dollar to pick up a quarter.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
But you know, I'm sure if they did, this is how I bet you how it went. They went and looked for an interpreter after weeks and weeks or whatever, months and months, and then they found out, oh, it's going to cost $2,000. And they're like, well, who's going to pay for it? How are we going to code this? And I'm like, well, we can't figure out how to code it. So then it gets on the shelf. Well, just table that until we figure out how to pay for it. And then boom, 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 another year and a half, 2 years go by.
Yep.
And like they figure maybe the problem will go away. Maybe Bud will kick the bucket and we don't have to deal with this anymore.
They underestimated me, I'll tell you that.
And they definitely underestimated you. And and the problem is because they don't get a lot of people like you and like Paula Fielder and Drew Kesse. Unfortunately, there's not enough of you guys. So
I think people get scared. Like we're working on the Steve McNair case and the young woman that was, I mean, they came to a conclusion within 4 hours that this 20-year-old girl who'd never handled a gun was able to take out a major football player with 6'3" football player with multiple gunshot wounds. It's impossible.
And she was 5'3".
I mean, and she'd never handled a gun in her life, right? So how does that happen? But yet a lot of people connected to her were afraid to talk. They're afraid. People are scared.
Yeah.
They don't know what is going on.
The NFL's afraid to talk. You know, his agent's afraid to talk.
I'm sure.
It's just like, because it's just opening up a can of worms. No one wants to get involved.
I'm not afraid
But
to talk.
it's
Was that?
I said, I'm not afraid to talk.
Oh,
well, no. Well, that's what I'm saying. You're an anomaly.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like people have to be like you.
And that's why
a great example of what needs to be done. But again, shining a light on what should have been done in the first place. Like, you shouldn't have to take this on. Like I told Paula all the time, you should not have to be running after drug dealers looking for answers. And when you're, just looking for answers on what happened to your loved one, she didn't just vanish into thin air. Okay. So,
and now we have proof.
And now we have proof that she wasn't a runaway, like the sheriff kept saying. And it's like,
but that's 15 years, 13 years later.
13 years later. But again, shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Should have been taken seriously from the minute it happened. And again, I think they just took your dad's word for it and they were like, okay.
Exactly.
And that's
and
the problem.
Too hard and too complicated.
Yes.
So they did nothing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the frustrating part. And that's where you're like, okay.
I just said to my husband the other night, we were talking about this, and I said, do you know that if he would have confessed that day, he'd already be out like 20 years? Like he's only going to get 20 years.
Completely.
My life would have been totally different.
Totally different. You would have been able to go live with your aunt. Both of you, both you and your brother would have been able to go have a normal childhood with your aunt and remember your mother and not have to have this scary feeling of like, did she leave us or did something happen to her? I can't even imagine that traumatic balancing act that you did as a child. I remember I came home from school one day at like 6 years old and my mother wasn't home. She was pregnant. She wasn't home and the baby was on her way. But I came home and they were like, your mother's gone. And I was like, what do you mean she's gone? Even just for that little bit of time, it's still all these years later sticks in your brain. I can't even imagine what that was like for you and your brother. It's just tragic.
There were so many times that I'd be at the mall or I had a paper route and I was delivering newspapers and there was a cottage on the lake that only got the newspaper in the summer. And I was like, I think that might be my mother. Like how the numbers of times that I would like double take and think, could that be her? Could she like, I kept going back to that same cottage, like snooping around and, and then she was gone. So she must've been like a visitor, not like living there.
Yeah. Right.
And I was traumatized. Like I missed it. I missed my opportunity. I didn't get to talk to her. Like, or I'd be in a mall and I think, I know it's not her, but what if it was? Like, I live my whole life like that.
That's what I'm saying. And you shouldn't have had to. That is absolutely the system failing you. You should not have spent your entire childhood looking for your mother because they just didn't try.
I also shouldn't have had to interpret to a police officer that my father doesn't want me anymore. And the police officer telling me to interpret to him that he's going to have to take me home anyway because you can't drop kids off at a police station. Like, why are you involving a 14-year-old in all of this ridiculousness?
Well, again, I mean, I just think
that was a sign of the times back then.
They wouldn't even have known what to do with a deaf person. Like they didn't have anyone on
staff. They should have put his butt in jail that night for neglect.
Absolutely.
But
taking your child and dump off your kid at the police station, I'm going to leave my kid here? Like there, child services. That's it.
But Glennie said it the best. Though she goes, he would always try to make people feel sorry for him. Play the poor, dumb, deaf guy. Don't understand, not sure. And I'm sure he played it up like I've been watching those Super 8 movies that you sent me and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and they're kind of scary because like knowing what I know now and seeing. I mean, there's no words because there's no sound. But just seeing how he acts around other people, and it just and just looking at the eyes and looking at how he looks at your mom, and he's it's really eerie. It's really eerie.
Well, people like that are able to kind of, I don't know, hypnotize people sometimes, and get what they want. They know how to turn on the charm. They know how to have that charisma to make you think he would never do something like that. Yeah,
they create their winning formula.
And the people who do think he could do something like that are too afraid to challenge him.
Of course. I mean, we've seen it multiple times with serial killers. where people around them would be like, no, he would never do that. That would never happen. He wouldn't do something like that. And
who knows?
and then when you find out, I mean, you don't know, Bud sounds like he's done this before. I don't think this was the first time that Bud did something like this.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Because once you get away with it once,
Mm-hmm.
that's usually the telltale sign.
Mhm.
You can get
And
away
then
with
he
it again.
turns up the sympathy card by like, oh, I just didn't understand. Oh, my brain. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Baloney.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't make
His
you
hand's not
kill
deaf.
people.
His hand's not deaf when it's around someone's throat.
Exactly.
Right.
There's a
That's
lot of
great.
deaf people in the world that don't kill people.
So what's your relationship with like the investigators now?
So I'm glad to circle back to that because I am I very much respect the current investigator. I feel like his partnership with Jeff, the PI, is what really helped bring us to a confession, and being open and willing to get someone else's input, look outside the box and ask someone else what their opinion is, or, whatever. I'm not privy to their conversations, but whatever they did, I do believe that, they supported each other, helped each other to get to where they are. And I'm proud to say that this past Monday, yesterday, both Jeff and Kevin went to Harrisburg to receive an award from the commander-in-chief or something like that of the Pennsylvania State Police for outstanding work.
Yeah.
And Jeff was
That's
retired, so he was a PA,
A
state trooper, but got one as a retired or something. I don't know. So
Well,
I'm proud of the work that they
That's
did.
great. That's all great. But you should have been there too and getting an award.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually, when I found out about it, I said, "Can I come?" And Jeff said they would never let you in. That it was very like counted and numbered, and you have,
Mhm.
I was like, "Well, can I crash it?" But that's like a 7.5-hour drive. So
Yeah, no, that's.
I don't think I would make that drive just to crash it. But yes, I mean, nobody's like pinning a rose on my nose for any of the work I've done, any of the, the hours, endless hours, money, transport, all the things that I've done. But I don't
know.
care
When
what I
you
did.
think about the financial and emotional toll it takes on both you and the families, like Paula's family and Drew Kess. I mean, Drew Kess, he had a big job, and when he took on the case, he had to quit his job, and he had
Right.
he had dedicated full time.
It's his kid.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't let it go.
And it's my
You're
mother.
not going to let it go.
No.
It's your parent. It's your child. You're not going to let it go. I don't care who you are. You're not going to let it go. It's very rare that someone's going to just say, okay, they're missing. No, I mean, it's just not the way it should be. And we've been saying this forever, that there really needs to be an agency just for this, just for missing people. And I know there are agencies for missing people, but what I'm saying is something that breaks down for each state.
Entity.
It's its own entity, like the FBI, where you have branches all over the country and you have people all over the country working on these different cases. This is the only country in the world we have this amount of missing people.
Right.
It's insane. Like 2 people went missing in our area just recently, just swiped off the street. No idea. I mean,
Gone.
it happens all the time. And especially in California. I mean, we've been dealing with serial killers and missing people here since I was a freshman in college, when Polly Klaas went missing right down the street from my college. And that's what started me on this whole thing with true crime, because I couldn't believe that beautiful little girl was swiped from her bedroom, in the middle of the night. And it was horrifying. And it's like, you can't even imagine it until it happens close to you. You see someone like yourself going through this, and you're just like, there has to be empathy. Number one,
Right.
Number one, empathy. It could be
Absolutely.
you. It could be your family. Don't be so quick to be dismissive.
That's
like for
amazing.
Paula, there was like a burn pit where they thought that Molly and Colt their bodies had been burned. And she told the OSBI officer, and he was so arrogant. He took the can of soda and he broke it in half, and he scooped the dirt up with a can of soda and said, oh, okay, I'll take this to the FBI and get it tested. And she was like,
Oh my
why would you do
gosh.
that? Like, I'm
Right.
telling you, we're hearing all the same stories over and over again. Why are you ignoring this?
Right.
But of course, at that point, the sheriff in that area was corrupt.
Yeah.
And it came out. How
and
bad
there's no
it was.
checks and balances.
There was no
You know.
checks and balances.
And here's the thing. And I had to double check this, but I remember this. It says approximately 600,000 people are reported missing in the U.S. annually.
That's insanity.
I did know that.
Yes.
That's
And
insanity.
they say about 26,000 active long-term missing person cases. They said this is a small percentage of them get solved very quickly. But still, that if you said 600,000 people died this year of whatever, if they were chewing gum,
it's an epidemic.
They would get rid of gum.
I mean, it is an epidemic. Yeah. I mean, this
is higher than the COVID numbers.
Oh yeah. It's insanity. I lived in 5 different countries in Europe. They did not have this epidemic. It was not an epidemic like this. There was
like you said, if there was a separate department for finding the missing, that would lighten the load of police officers who are trying to do other things and also doing this, at the same time.
Well, the thing is, it's like, let them have, you have your homicide division, have the missing persons only. That's it. That's all they deal with is missing person cases. Believe me, there's plenty to go around.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. It's like, especially, I mean, God, California, I think is the #1 in the country for this stuff. But why wouldn't we advocate for that? And I think that's something that we should still pursue.
Well, I think what would be good is because of the local and the state don't have the resources of it, create a federally program that assists them, that brings, if they can't handle it, bring in like a task force for, like, say they have 10, 12 missing people in this one area,
MPI, missing person investigation.
Yes. Exactly. If we spend all this money on all this other stuff that's fraud and all this other crap, why can't we spend it on something that's actually going to help people like yourself? And I think that it should be its own entity like the FBI. It should be like that, where it is just for that missing person investigations. And that's it. I mean, the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Chickasaw Nation and Lighthorse Police, thank God for them, or we would have never found Molly and Cole. Yeah. And they're at the federal level. Because the local level was not looking for them.
They gave up.
Right. Local level wasn't going to look for them anymore.
They didn't want it to be solved.
And the same thing's happening with the Noah Presgrove case. Nobody wants that case solved. So it's a terrible tragedy.
I felt like that over the years with my mother's case. Like, no one wants to be bothered. It's too much work. It's too hard because she was deaf and he's deaf. And like, I just time and time again felt like, does anyone care that this woman lost her life? Anyone?
I think a lot of them might have believed that she did run away.
I think they did too. The early ones, but
the early ones. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like in the beginning, but people hear this story. We saw that in South Carolina. They were like, well,
that guy's still walking around.
Well,
yeah.
That father's still walking around, because the detectives that they were hoping to God that, when we got him, we actually got him we got the 2 sons who are also former Marines now. We found where he lived for them, took them, and basically they ambushed him. They just rolled up on him, went in there, and we put mics on him. We couldn't go in cameras, but we heard the whole thing, and they grilled him. And, the detectives, we called the detectives and said, listen, this is what we got from these guys. But they said it's still not enough.
That makes me think of my case, because he confessed and they're saying it's still not enough. So now we have a whole nother hearing for the writ of habeas corpus to prove that even though he confessed, we have to provide all this other evidence that shows that a crime was committed in order to go forward.
Yeah.
Ludicrous.
It's because of the profile of it now, because you've elevated it to a public thing, and I really think that the only reason they're doing that is so they don't have to deal with an appeal. So it's like they're doing all the stuff. So when they do go through the court, and I'm just speculating here, but that's what it sounds like, because they don't want to, because these court proceedings, they take a lot of effort, resources, and money. They don't want to get sued. I mean, this is a county court, correct?
It is.
It's a county court. So, and Erie County is probably it's probably not a wealthy county. It looks like a rural
Crawford County, and it's even way smaller than Erie.
So, that was one of the things that, if you ever remember about the making of a murder, that was the biggest problem they had with that case, is that they were afraid to try the case for fear of, if they didn't get it, that the guy was going to sue them and bankrupt the county. So that you got a political quotient here too that goes in there.
Right.
When these high profile cases.
I threatened to sue them if they didn't get interpreters in the courtroom.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
But
good for you, Alison.
yeah.
I mean,
I think
honestly,
you're on the right track.
You've done everything that you could to make sure that you got justice for your mother, and she would be so proud of you. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's been, the toll it's taken, but you know what? You're just a firecracker. So you're just going to firecracker out, you're just going to keep going
because I know I didn't get that from him.
Well, we knew it when we met Glennie, because we were like, wow, it's like you guys were like boom, boom. It's like two firecrackers. He goes, if you throw Lonene in there, forget it.
Right.
And that was the other thing that was really interesting about watching those the Super 8 movies. It was like your mom and all of her side of the family. I mean, they couldn't have been having a better time.
Right.
There's like shots like, where they're dyeing her hair and they're doing this. And they're always,
Right.
Every time you saw your mom, she was making faces. She was smiling. She was doing something goofy. It was really interesting to see that. I would have loved to have heard the sound in that too. And then you cut to your father, and he's just like this brooding kind of looming guy that would like give like a fake smile for the photograph and then literally go back to like stone face.
Yeah.
And it was, it was.
How about when he was just leaning on the counter, just watching her dance, but wouldn't engage with anyone?
I know. So, and it's like, and as we know, that's post his rape conviction. That was post to a lot of the stuff that he did. So it's like, he wasn't a good guy.
And that's the thing. He'd done these things prior to this. That should have been the red flag right there. Like, this is not your average guy, and his wife just took off.
Right.
It's just not. If you talk to anyone in the family and you look at his record and you look at his history, yeah. I wonder if it would have been different if he hadn't have been deaf.
But this is also a trend that we've seen even back then, and it's happening today as well, is where they victim shame. When they can't figure out what happened. They start blaming
the victim. They started blaming Noah Presgrove for getting murdered. They said that he deserved it. You don't know him. You don't know what he was like. You don't know what he used to do. He used to go after everyone's girlfriend. I said, hold on a second.
This is high school.
Are you telling me that you're saying, and this is a social media campaign that's out there. I mean, these are grown adults saying this kind of stuff. Wow. It's insanity. And anytime anyone stands up for him or says anything that they don't agree with, they will victim shame him and say he got what he deserved. How dare you say this about a 19-year-old boy who was murdered and left naked on the side of the road? I mean, it's disgusting.
They're doing it with the Austin Metcalf case. The kid that got the athlete that got stabbed in Texas by the other, know. They're turning the killer into a victim.
Well, they're trying to politicize it. I mean, and that's the problem too.
He brought a knife to a track meet. He stabbed him into the chest.
Bud is not the victim here. Okay? No. But I do think that in the beginning, they might have seen him as the victim of, oh, you poor God, your wife left you with 2 kids.
Right.
And that's a big problem, because there's that lack of empathy for the victim.
Yep.
Which is why his defense team at the last hearing wheeled him in on a wheelchair.
Well, and I think some of it could have been, this is just my hunch, that maybe they didn't want him to have a cane. But I don't know.
No. Are you kidding?
No, you think it was like for show?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm gonna date myself, but remember the Brady Bunch episode when they were in court and the guy was claiming that he was hurt and he came in with a neck brace, and then
I don't remember that, but it sounds good.
Yeah. So then the father, like he knew he was faking, and he threw a book on the ground and it slammed very loud, and he went like this, and he's like, "See his neck move." It's just trying to get in sympathy. Bud was just trying to.
If there was a fire alarm, I bet you Bud would have jumped right out of that wheelchair.
Right? I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
Alison, you're awesome. We love you. You're an amazing inspiration to anyone who's ever been through anything, even just in life in general. Just to move through it, get to the end of it,
and get to where you are now. You have a lovely family, and
just keep going.
You're doing amazing work at school, and and you have the support of both your family and your friends and your class coworkers. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you got a lot of capital. So when this is, use it, because
I want to help others. That's my entire plan.
Mhm.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we're here to help, but any way we can.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
This Monday.com ad was created by a team of people and AI agents. Reese, our content agent, wrote the copy based on our best practices, like mentioning Monday.com 3 times. That was the second. Johnny, our coordination agent, built the timeline and kept everyone aligned. Olivia, our human creative director, stayed in the loop. Because agents are great, but they don't always know when a joke lands. She had one note: tell listeners it only takes minutes to build an agent. So, minutes. Create your own AI agent today on Monday.com.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.